you got big dreams and bad genes, you are in the right place. Bromley shirts are available at barbellapparel.com. Link is in the description. You got the Arnold Classic coming up. Forever, it's been the heaviest show on earth. After Shaw's show, I'm not sure we can call it that anymore.
No.
And I've heard you say multiple times how that show absolutely chewed you up, which that doesn't even make sense to me, because when I feel chewed up, it's like I'm not deadlifting for 6 weeks. It's like I got separated joints and strains, and I just need to bathe in ibuprofen. But the fact that you went through that thing that just annihilated the best athletes in the world, you yourself got tore up, and then on the back end of it, it's like, well, right back to work. Hey, let's do a 200 rep squat challenge, and it's like the things that you jump into. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. But before we get into the Arnold, just give me a little overview of your experience at Shaw's show with just the stupidly heavy, bone-crushing weights.
In every show, there's areas of relief. World's Strongest Man, you got a loading medley. Like, at least it's different, right? There's something different about it. Say at the Arnold this year, we've got, max deadlift, cool, that'll be heavy. Then we have the overhead medley, which is heavy, but it'll be a bit paced out. Then you've got like a max explosive lift, and then you got a stone to shoulder, which is sort of more technical, a little bit more funny. So you have these things where you're like, not everything is going central nervous system 10 out of 10. At Shaw, my God, I mean, so we start with max deadlift, 3 attempts, calibrated plates, so you don't get any action in the bar either. It's not fun. It's not cool. All right, cool. We're done that. Then you go to a medley, which the show is sort of based off of Fortissimus. He's got a lot of reverence for that. Like, everything here was heavier than at Fortissimus. This was a very similar one that had been run, but he just made it heavier, and you're looking at it, and in that medley, it finished with a 190 kilo axle, I believe. Or sorry, a 200 log. I think it was a 185 axle, a 200 log, something like that. It was finishing heavier than guys were attempting for max at World's Strongest Man final with the max axle. You go, holy shit, and you're doing that right after a max deadlift. And then on paper, you're like, okay, things might chill out a little bit, because like, okay, wheelbarrow into arm over arm, it should be okay. And then the arm over arm is impossible. Like, it is the heaviest thing I've ever pulled. So you tear up your hands. Then keg toss, like, okay, that'll be fine. But then after all of those events, then a maximal ballistic effort, you're like, okay, and that's just the first day. And so it's just like no effort, no let up whatsoever, just relentless time and time again. You've got a squat that 10 of 16 guys failed. You've got Atlas stones, essentially for max, where there's a lot of personal responsibility that has to be had on how many fails there were in that event. But half of the field failed. You add up all of the zeros, you're talking 30 plus zeros from the 16 strongest men in the world who can't even complete the first rep, the first attempt of an event. It's insane. The other additional thing that people don't realize about Shaw is you've got the competition arena, and right beside you've got the hotel. So even if fans aren't trying to be weird, like, that's the normal hotel to stay in, and that's where we are. So from the second you leave your hotel room all the way through competition to the second you go back in your hotel room, there's always someone talking to you about something. And the fans are who pays our bills, and they deserve our time and attention for sure. But having no downtime is really difficult. And so for someone like me, someone like Thor, it's an added pressure and added challenge where some of the newer guys might not get interrupted or bothered as much, but you can't eat breakfast by yourself. You can't have a lunch or dinner by yourself. You can't do anything other than interact with people all day. So it's not just the physical side, it's the psychological side as well. And that show will forever be, in my eyes, the most difficult.
It was evident to anybody who watched it. Like, to watch the people struggle that you don't see struggle. I'm torn on how to perceive shows that go off like that, because the selfish fan in me gets super excited when everybody zeros, because there is, and I remember getting into arguments with people on the forums like 20 years ago, like back when the Morande Muscle Forum was up, because there were guys like, well, if I'm sitting in the stands watching a beer or drinking a beer, watching the show, I think, zeros are boring. And I'm like, I think watching everybody get reps is boring. Like, I remember being at the Arnold when I was, back when Z was competing. I was here. Marius threw the weight for height into the audience, which was fun to watch in person. But Z is like coming up to like his peak, and I remember watching everybody get their shit pushed in. Pardon my language, with the Apollon's wheels or Apollon's wheels, and Z coming in and just making it look like a plastic toy. And it's like you never see anything that electric, but it's predicated on the pain and suffering of everybody else who's breaking themselves to try to do this thing. And that kind of brings me to like, it's one thing to have things to appease the fans, but every event can't be that way. So then I think about responsibility, and it seems like there is a push right now, not just in the pro divisions, but the middleweight classes and the women's divisions, I'm sure, are seeing this as well, of more events, heavier events, chasing world records, and kind of demanding that athletes be ready for anything at any time without really an actual peak. And it's like, anyway, so what do you think about that as far as contributing to the risk or like responsibility of the promoters to not chew up the athletes because you should just be ready to go into the meat grinder?
Yeah, it's hard because none of the promoters talk to each other. So whilst we say Strongest Man on Earth is the heaviest show, and Brian's declaring that, and it works out nicely that Worlds is generally a little bit more dynamic, as is the Invitational. No one's telling them they have to be. So if we had that Shaw show, and then we had Rogue, who decided to be really heavy as well, you're going to have a lot of guys get destroyed. It's difficult. Do you want guys to compete a lot, or do you want us to lift the heaviest weights every time you see us? And I think most people would tend to say we want you to compete a lot. We want the opportunity to watch this and for it to be entertaining and engaging. And so, yeah... The difficult part is I'm a huge personal responsibility guy. It's on yourself. If you don't like the look of a show, you think it's too heavy, you think there's too much, don't do it. No one's forcing you to do it. On the flip side, it's not a sport where you're making $100,000 to come fifth at World's Strongest Man. Like you can earn your money and get out. You sort of have to be there regularly if you're relying on that. And so there is a line of exploitation if you are forcing people to do things that you know are probably going to get them hurt. So that's the difficult line. I would also draw a massive distinction between people like me who are doing it for a living professionally, who are getting paid, who are getting trips paid for and accommodated and everything, versus middleweight. You're doing it for fun. The best thing that possibly happens is that you cover your travel expenses. The promoter, in my opinion, has a substantial responsibility to make sure that they're doing things reasonably and safely for non-professional divisions. Because these guys and girls, they got to go back to fucking doing HVAC or being an accountant or whatever. You can't have your muscles blown out for that.
Ever find yourself confused by the complexity of programming? I know I struggled like crazy in my early strongman career. There was just too much advice, and every decision I made felt like a guess. As soon as I hit a snag in any program, I would have no idea what to do, so I would inevitably bail. It took me years of training and coaching to figure out how to predictably increase muscle and strength, both in myself and others. And those lessons took me to my own showings in World's Strongest Man, America's Strongest Man, and the Arnold in the 231-pound weight class. This is why we made BaseStrength AI, to give clear, direct, and personalized instruction right in the middle of your workout in real time. BaseStrength AI features 3 programs: Block, 70s Powerlifter, and Bullmastiff, each one inspired by the work ethic and programming of the biggest and strongest bodybuilders, powerlifters, and strongmen throughout history. These templates originated in my book Base Strength, and they can be ran as is, but with BaseStrength AI, weight and volume are prescribed to you on your specific feedback, and that's personalization that even an online coach can't replicate. This gives you the absolute certainty that every rep is meaningful, that every block of training is getting you closer to your goals. It's my programming, but it's your program. Get the heart of old school training with the intelligence of a coach right in your back pocket. Head now to basestrength.com.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm starting to see more now as things pick up. Like I heard Diefenbaugh and Morehouse talking about, you know, the Strongman Corp and like kind of OSG takeover and the stuff they're doing there. And a comment was made to the effect of like, well, you can't be a pro strongman anymore and have a full peak, right? Like you gotta be ready to go. So it's you need to be there to earn the money, but it seems like you also need to be there to not get looked over next time. So you actually keep your foot there to begin with. And then I'm looking at these events that they're coming out with. Okay, like they had one I just saw. It's what used to be Clash on the Coast. Before that, shockingly had a change of hands. And then I forget what it's called now, but it's. I'm sorry.
It's not Chaos, is it? That's the UK one.
No, is it? PFL or it's like Pro Strongman League. I don't remember. It's
Anyway.
a series of letters. Yeah. But it's in the same vein. But this year they showed us what, or Tim, the guy that runs Heavy Metal where I train at, showed me the list, and it's 10 events, and it looks like it wants to be Shaw 2.0. It's max axle, a heavy squat, max deadlift, multiple max events, and there's 10 events, and they're all heavy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, who's going to watch this? I mean, nobody wants to watch 10 highlight reels, let alone the full thing. Nobody wants to compete in this. And then it's like your success hinges on people who are literally, like every show I've gone to, it's a couple grand in the hole. It is what it is. It's fun. I can afford to do it. It's cool. Nobody's getting paid. We're just like, the best we could do is like, social media or whatever. But it's like on the one hand, pushing the sport forward is cool. But on the other hand, I don't know what the supreme volume is really doing for anybody.
Yeah, and the biggest mistake I think that's happening in strongman when we talk about growing the sport, which by the way, I'm very much with you. Why do we not have more reverence for how much it's grown? It is accelerating at this insane, massive rate. Anyway, the biggest mistake I think promoters are making is thinking that the sport is going to grow by getting people to watch. The sport's going to grow by getting people to participate. And by making these shows that are incredibly unappealing to participate in, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So, yep, at the pro level, sure, it shouldn't look welcoming. It shouldn't look like other people can do it because that's the whole point. But at the local level, not everything has to be a scale to become the world's strongest man. It can just be a fun show. It can just be a cool parking lot show. It can just be a cool show in a little stadium in North Carolina, whatever. And inspire people to want to do that and join. And that's it. And it gets to the whole world record chasing, which I've done some of in the past because I think it's cool to do something no one's ever done before. But my controversial take, maybe it's controversial, I don't think it is. The only real records that matter are what's the heaviest weight a human being has deadlifted, log pressed, or axle pressed. Other than that, you're like the different stone diameters and different conditions and different tacky and different body weight and different caveats on age and blah, 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 blah. The more caveats we put on things, the less anyone cares. So let's stop chasing these records that no one really cares about, and let's just empower people to be able to participate in droves. And then the ones who are really, really high quality, they're going to make it through to the pros. They're going to make it through to things where they will get destroyed eventually. But you don't need to be destroyed at a local show to parse out who might be good at a higher level.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they're leaving so much on the table. I think there's a problem with lack of creativity in some of these sports because strongman has a problem that like CrossFit has where it's open-ended. So you can do anything. So people think, well, then we should do everything. And if you're in CrossFit, that's what you're paddle boarding or you're punting a football or something. And in strongman, you see people kind of reach and come up with some goofy stuff for the sake of being different or whatever. But it seems like the default move is if you want to get a buzz, it's weight, world record. And it's unfortunate because I think you're leaving a lot on the table for interesting ways you could get, because it is, the records are the records, but the meat is person versus person and you versus a field. And I think there's interesting ways you could get people to compete that would, further the sport as far as performance goes, but also, do what it needs to do to get people excited to participate and get people excited to tune in when it's time to tune in. But I could just see, it's like if you are sitting here with any amount of frustration on your breath from weight or things being difficult or it's like, what hope is there for the rest of us? You know what I mean? It's like, who else is better prepared for this stuff? You're like, God, this is brutal, bro. And I'm like,
Yeah.
geez, it's like, okay, maybe the pendulum's got to swing back a little bit. So would you, next year, I mean, let's say you look at the Shaw Classic and it's essentially the same list of events. I mean, you've called it the heaviest show. It's one I think you're the most proud of. Do you dive back in? And if you do you change anything about your approach to it?
I definitely dive back in. My personality, I don't do all the Giants live shows because I need the paycheck. So you can do the math. I'm cool. I'm good. What is not cool to me is someone else winning a show that I could be at and I'm fit enough to go compete in, and they didn't beat me. If someone beats me, great. Fair and square, cool. Tom, world's strongest man last year. Hats off. Deserved it 100%. But I just can't sit on my couch and watch someone win a title that I could be there contesting. So yes, I will go back for that reason. And as a person, I'm 100% into things or 100% out. So long as I'm in strongman, you're going to see me in a lot of places. In terms of preparing for it, I think I would prepare the same, but I would recover on the back end a little bit differently. Since you have this juxtaposition of Strongest Man on Earth, of like the hardest show, heaviest show of the year, and then you've got the Invitational, which is sort of the most demanding from a cardiovascular perspective, and definitely one of those shows where being strong enough is okay. I think I can be less paranoid about maintaining that strength over a few months. Go, you know what, maybe the week after Shaw, like, I actually do something relaxing for the first time in years. Maybe I go to the spa a couple of times. Maybe I make it a priority to go on some more walks because it'll be autumn in Canada and the leaves are changing color, and just prioritizing that stuff I think is going to be have to be a major change because everyone gets worn out, everyone gets burnt out, everyone gets less excited about lifting weight at times, yeah, I think that would be it. But I'm not operating in a way to keep myself in one piece for a long time. I'm operating in a way to be as successful as I can and have an exit plan before my body is destroyed.
That seems like the best potential strategy you could come up with, especially since you've successfully monetized everything. It's like, even if you stop competing today, you still have a foot in the sport that could last indefinitely for as long as you're recording and collaborating and so on.
Yeah.
And that's a permanence that competing isn't going to get you. So, I mean, kudos for having a plan and for being able to establish that for yourself.
And it's from day one, and it's back to, if you stand for nothing, nobody's going to love you. They might love to watch you compete, but they're not going to stick with you. I've got tons of plans for when I'm done competing. I probably have more plans when I'm done competing than I do while I'm competing. It's probably a bit of a chain, ball and chain on some of the business stuff, on some of the social media stuff that I want to do. But that's why I put my opinions out there that I know will be controversial. That's why I made a post when the thing blew up with Luke. Yeah, I was being called into question. Do I have to make a comment about that? No, not really. Is it my business? Not really, but I know more than a lot of people do. Okay, fine. I'm going to put it on myself to say my family is something that is incredibly important to me, and to me, that is the number one thing in the world. And some people are going to look and go, you're an asshole for saying anything. Fair enough. I totally get it. And some people are going to go, you know what, I'm a dad too, and that's the most important thing to me too, and I'm glad that someone is there who I can look up to. People always say don't meet your heroes, and the only reason I would say don't meet me is because I'm probably not as interesting as you think I am. Like, my favorite thing to do is just sit on the couch and play Spider Solitaire. Like, that's really fun in terms of like just downtime, alone time. But I want to portray myself to be someone who people can look up to in a way, and I can be authentic and I can be myself. And when I walk into the Arnold, there's no persona that I have to put on. And in that, I think then you gain loyal fans over a long period of time, not just the ones who want to see you deadlift max weight.